If you wake up every morning feeling stiff, sore, or like your joints are older than you are, I need you to listen closely, because what I'm about to share could change how your body feels every single day. A lot of people think arthritis pain is just something you have to live with, but what if I told you some of that pain might be coming straight from your plate? Today, I'm exposing 7 everyday foods that quietly make arthritis worse, and more importantly, what you should be eating instead so your joints can finally get some relief. Now, let me be clear right from the start. Arthritis isn't just about aging or genetics. Inflammation plays a massive role, and food is one of the biggest inflammation triggers there is. The scary part is that many of these foods are marketed as normal, harmless, or even healthy, so people keep eating them without realizing they're pouring fuel on the fire inside their joints. The first major problem food is sugar. I'm not just talking about desserts, I mean the hidden sugars in cereals, flavored yogurts, sauces, and even so-called health snacks. Sugar spikes inflammation in the body and triggers the release of cytokines, which are chemicals that directly increase joint pain and swelling. Instead of feeding that cycle, your joints respond much better when you satisfy sweet cravings with whole fruits like berries, cherries, or apples. These naturally contain antioxidants that actually calm inflammation rather than ignite it. Next up is refined carbohydrates, things like white bread, pasta, pastries, and crackers. These foods break down into sugar almost immediately in your body, causing the same inflammatory response. Over time, this can worsen stiffness and make movement feel harder than it should. A much better option is switching to whole grains like oats, quinoa, or brown rice, which digest more slowly and help stabilize inflammation rather than spike it. Another big offender is fried food. French fries, fried chicken, and anything deep-fried may taste good in the moment, but they're loaded with advanced glycation end products. These compounds literally age your tissues and increase joint damage. If you still love crispy textures, try baking or air-frying foods using olive oil. Olive oil contains compounds that act similarly to anti-inflammatory medications, but without the side effects. Processed meats are another silent problem. Bacon, sausage, hot dogs, and deli meats contain preservatives and compounds that trigger systemic inflammation. Studies consistently show that people who eat a lot of processed meat experience more joint pain and stiffness. Instead, your joints thrive on lean protein sources like wild-caught fish, especially salmon or sardines, which are rich in omega-3 fatty acids. These fats are known to reduce joint swelling and tenderness over time. Dairy is a tricky one because it affects people differently, but for many with arthritis, especially inflammatory types, dairy can worsen symptoms. Certain proteins in dairy may trigger immune responses that increase joint pain. If you notice more stiffness after consuming milk or cheese, try switching to alternatives like almond milk or coconut yogurt. Many people are shocked at how much better their joints feel after making this simple change. Highly processed vegetable oils like corn oil, soybean oil, and sunflower oil are another major issue. These oils are extremely high in omega-6 fatty acids, which promote inflammation when consumed in excess. Most modern diets already contain far too much omega-6. Swapping these oils for olive oil or avocado oil can significantly shift your body toward an anti-inflammatory state, helping joints move more freely. Finally, alcohol deserves attention. While an occasional drink may seem harmless, regular alcohol consumption increases inflammation and can interfere with your body's ability to repair joint tissue. It can also worsen swelling and pain, especially the next day. Replacing alcohol with herbal teas, water infused with lemon, or even tart cherry juice can help reduce inflammation and support joint recovery instead. Now here's the good news. When you remove these inflammatory foods, you don't have to feel deprived. Your joints absolutely love foods rich in antioxidants, healthy fats, and natural anti-inflammatory compounds. Leafy greens, fatty fish, nuts, seeds, berries, turmeric, ginger, and olive oil all work together to calm inflammation from the inside out. Over time, many people notice less morning stiffness, reduced swelling, and improved mobility just by changing what they eat. If you're dealing with arthritis, your body isn't broken, it's communicating with you. Pain is often a signal, not a life sentence. Every meal is a chance to either calm the fire in your joints or make it burn stronger. The choice you make today can directly affect how you feel tomorrow. If this video helped you understand your arthritis in a new way, make sure to like it, subscribe, and share it with someone who's struggling with joint pain. And remember, healing doesn't start with a prescription, it often starts with what's on your plate. When most people hear the word arthritis, they immediately think of aging, worn-out joints, or bad luck with genetics. And while those factors can play a role, they are only a small piece of a much bigger picture. Arthritis pain is deeply connected to inflammation inside the body, and inflammation is not something that just happens randomly. It is influenced every single day by lifestyle choices, stress levels, sleep quality, and especially by what you eat. This is where many people get stuck, because they believe their joints are simply deteriorating over time, when in reality their body may be stuck in a constant inflammatory state that keeps pain, stiffness, and swelling switched on. Inflammation itself is not the enemy. In fact, it's a natural and necessary process that helps the body heal after injury or fight off infections. The problem starts when inflammation becomes chronic, meaning it never really turns off. When this happens, instead of protecting the joints, inflammation begins to attack healthy tissues, including cartilage, ligaments, and the lining of the joints. This ongoing internal irritation is what causes that familiar deep ache, morning stiffness, reduced range of motion, and flare-ups that seem to come out of nowhere. What many people don't realize is that food is one of the strongest signals your immune system responds to. Every time you eat, your body interprets that meal as either calming or threatening. Certain foods send a message of safety and nourishment, allowing inflammation to settle down, while others trigger immune responses that amplify inflammatory chemicals throughout the bloodstream. Over time, those repeated signals shape how your joints feel day after day. This is why two people with the same arthritis diagnosis can feel completely different. One person may struggle to get out of bed, while another stays active with minimal discomfort. The difference often isn't the severity of joint damage, but the level of inflammation circulating inside the body. When inflammation is high, even minor joint wear can feel unbearable. When inflammation is controlled, the body becomes far more resilient, and pain is often reduced significantly. Another important thing to understand is that inflammation doesn't just stay in one place. When you consume inflammatory foods regularly, the response becomes systemic, meaning it affects the entire body, not just one joint. This is why arthritis pain often moves around or flares in multiple areas at once. Knees, hands, hips, shoulders, and even the spine can all become affected because they're being bathed in the same inflammatory chemicals. Many people are told that arthritis is irreversible, which can feel discouraging and leave them believing there's nothing they can do except manage symptoms with medication. While it's true that some joint damage can't be undone, inflammation is highly responsive to change. The body constantly adapts to its environment, and when inflammatory triggers are reduced, it often responds by calming down. This can lead to noticeable improvements in pain, stiffness, and mobility, sometimes within weeks. It's also important to understand that inflammation and pain don't always move at the same speed. You might eat poorly for years before arthritis symptoms show up, and by the time the pain becomes noticeable, the inflammatory process has already been active for a long time. This delayed response makes it easy to miss the connection between diet and joint pain. When people start eating differently and notice improvement, it can feel surprising, but biologically it makes perfect sense. Hormones, gut health, and immune function all interact with inflammation as well. The gut plays a particularly powerful role because it's where the immune system first encounters food. When the gut lining becomes irritated or imbalanced, inflammatory signals increase, and this often shows up as joint pain. Certain foods can damage the gut barrier over time, allowing inflammatory compounds to enter the bloodstream more easily and reach the joints. Stress also feeds into this cycle. Chronic stress increases cortisol and other stress hormones, which can worsen inflammation when elevated for long periods. When stress is combined with inflammatory foods, the effect on joints can be amplified. This is why arthritis flare-ups often happen during stressful periods or after poor eating habits, even if no physical injury has occurred. Understanding that arthritis is driven by inflammation, rather than just wear and tear, shifts the entire mindset around healing. Instead of feeling powerless, people begin to see that they have daily opportunities to influence how their body feels. Every meal becomes a chance to support joint health rather than sabotage it. This doesn't mean perfection is required, but consistency matters more than most people realize. The body is incredibly intelligent and responsive. When inflammatory triggers are reduced, the immune system often recalibrates itself. Swelling may go down, stiffness may ease, and movement can become less painful. This process doesn't happen overnight, but it builds gradually as the body receives clearer signals of safety and nourishment. Over time, many people notice that flare-ups become less frequent and less intense. Believing that arthritis pain is only about age can prevent people from exploring these possibilities. While aging does change the body, it does not automatically mean living in constant pain. Many older adults maintain flexible, strong joints because their inflammation levels are low. On the other hand, younger people can develop severe arthritis symptoms when inflammation is chronically high. Recognizing inflammation as the core driver of arthritis pain opens the door to real, meaningful change. It reframes arthritis from a fixed condition into a dynamic process that can be influenced. The joints are not isolated parts of the body. They reflect what is happening internally. When inflammation is addressed at its source, the entire system benefits, allowing the body to move with greater ease and less resistance. Many people with arthritis believe they are doing everything right. They take their medications, try to stay active, and avoid obvious junk food. Yet the pain, stiffness, and swelling continue to linger. What's often overlooked is that some of the most common foods eaten every day are quietly fueling inflammation without people realizing it. These foods don't always taste unhealthy, and they're rarely labeled as harmful, which makes them even more dangerous for sensitive joints. The idea that everyday foods can worsen joint inflammation feels surprising to many because these items are normalized in modern diets. They appear at breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks, woven so deeply into daily routines that questioning them feels unnecessary. Because they don't cause immediate reactions like allergies do, the connection between these foods and arthritis pain often goes unnoticed. The inflammation builds slowly, silently, until one day the joints feel stiff, swollen, or painful, and the cause seems unclear. One of the biggest challenges with these foods is that they are often highly processed. Processing changes the natural structure of food, stripping away fiber and nutrients while adding preservatives, sugars, and unhealthy fats. These alterations make food easier to overconsume and harder for the body to process efficiently. The immune system interprets these substances as irritants, triggering inflammatory responses that don't switch off easily, especially when these foods are eaten daily. Many of these inflammatory foods are marketed as convenient or even healthy. Breakfast items like flavored cereals, granola bars, and packaged smoothies may appear nutritious, yet they often contain high amounts of added sugar and refined carbohydrates. These ingredients rapidly spike blood sugar levels, which in turn activate inflammatory pathways. For someone with arthritis, this can mean increased joint stiffness and discomfort later in the day, without any obvious reason tied back to breakfast. Another reason these foods are so harmful is because they disrupt metabolic balance. Repeated blood sugar spikes force the body to produce more insulin, and over time this contributes to insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is closely linked to chronic inflammation, creating an internal environment where joints are constantly under stress. This metabolic inflammation doesn't stay confined to one system. It spreads throughout the body, affecting muscles, nerves, and connective tissues. Hidden inflammatory foods also interfere with gut health. The gut is home to trillions of bacteria that play a major role in regulating immune responses. Highly processed foods can disrupt this balance, favoring harmful bacteria while starving beneficial ones. When the gut microbiome becomes imbalanced, the intestinal lining can weaken, allowing inflammatory compounds to enter the bloodstream more easily. Once circulating, these compounds often target vulnerable areas like joints, intensifying arthritis symptoms. What makes this even more complicated is that inflammation triggered by food doesn't always show up immediately. Unlike food poisoning or allergies, the effects may take hours or even days to appear. This delayed response makes it difficult to pinpoint which foods are causing problems. People may eat the same inflammatory foods daily, creating a constant background level of inflammation, making flare-ups feel random when they are actually predictable. Social and cultural habits also play a role. Many inflammatory foods are associated with comfort, tradition, or convenience. They show up at family gatherings, social events, and busy workdays. Because these foods are emotionally familiar, it's easy to overlook their physical impact. Over time, the body learns to associate these foods with inflammation, but the mind doesn't always make that connection right away. Another issue is portion size. Even foods that seem harmless in small amounts can become inflammatory when eaten in excess. Modern food environments encourage large portions, frequent snacking, and constant grazing. This keeps the digestive and immune systems in a continuous state of activity, leaving little time for recovery. For someone with arthritis, this constant stimulation can translate into persistent joint discomfort. It's also important to understand that inflammatory foods can affect people differently. Genetics, gut health, hormone levels, and overall lifestyle influence how the body responds. This is why one person may tolerate certain foods while another experiences significant joint pain from the same meal. This variability often leads to confusion and frustration, making people doubt whether food truly plays a role in their arthritis. The cumulative effect of these everyday foods is what makes them so damaging. A single meal may not cause noticeable pain, but years of repeated exposure gradually wear down the body's ability to regulate inflammation. This slow buildup explains why arthritis often develops or worsens over time rather than appearing suddenly. The joints are not just reacting to age or use, but to a long-term inflammatory environment created by daily choices. Recognizing that common foods can secretly worsen arthritis is empowering rather than discouraging. It shifts the focus from helplessness to awareness. When people start paying attention to how their body responds after meals, patterns often emerge. Reduced stiffness, less swelling, and improved mobility can appear when inflammatory foods are removed or reduced, reinforcing the connection between diet and joint health. Understanding this relationship also encourages a more compassionate approach to healing. Instead of blaming the body for being painful or stiff, people can see arthritis as a signal that something needs adjustment. Food becomes information rather than just fuel. Each choice sends a message to the immune system, either calming it or provoking it. Once this awareness develops, many people begin to feel more in control of their symptoms. They realize that while they may not be able to change their diagnosis, they can influence how intense or frequent their pain becomes. Everyday foods stop being invisible contributors and start being recognized as powerful factors in joint health. This awareness alone can lead to meaningful improvements in comfort, movement, and overall quality of life. Sugar plays a much bigger role in arthritis pain than most people ever imagine, and the reason it's so damaging has nothing to do with willpower or weakness. Sugar directly interferes with how the body regulates inflammation, and once that process is disrupted, joint pain often becomes louder, more persistent, and harder to control. What makes sugar especially problematic is how easily it sneaks into the diet, not just through obvious sweets, but through foods people eat every single day without thinking twice. When sugar enters the bloodstream, it causes a rapid spike in blood glucose levels. The body responds by releasing insulin to bring those levels back down. While this process is normal, frequent spikes force the system to work overtime. Over time, this constant demand creates metabolic stress, which activates inflammatory pathways throughout the body. These pathways release chemicals called cytokines, and cytokines are directly involved in increasing joint pain, swelling, and stiffness in people with arthritis. What's especially concerning is that these inflammatory chemicals don't stay localized. Once released, they circulate through the bloodstream and settle in areas that are already vulnerable, such as joints with existing wear, cartilage thinning, or immune sensitivity. This is why someone may notice that their arthritis flares after a sugary meal, even if that meal had nothing to do with physical activity or joint strain. Another issue with sugar is its effect on collagen, which is a critical protein for joint structure and flexibility. High sugar levels lead to a process called glycation, where sugar molecules bind to proteins like collagen and make them stiff and brittle. When collagen loses its flexibility, joints lose their ability to absorb shock and move smoothly. This makes everyday movements feel more painful and can accelerate joint degeneration over time. Sugar also disrupts the balance of fats in the body. Diets high in sugar tend to increase levels of pro-inflammatory fats while reducing the effectiveness of anti-inflammatory fats. This imbalance creates an internal environment where inflammation is constantly favored, making it harder for the body to calm down after a flare-up. Even if someone is eating healthy foods alongside sugar, the inflammatory effect can still dominate. The gut is another major target of sugar's impact. Excess sugar feeds harmful gut bacteria and yeast, allowing them to grow out of balance. This imbalance weakens the gut lining, increasing intestinal permeability. When the gut barrier is compromised, inflammatory compounds can pass into the bloodstream more easily. Once they enter circulation, they often aggravate joints, intensifying arthritis symptoms without any obvious external trigger. What makes sugar particularly deceptive is that its effects are not always immediate. Someone might enjoy a dessert or sugary drink and feel fine at first, only to experience increased stiffness or aching hours later or the next day. This delay makes it difficult to associate sugar with pain, leading many people to dismiss diet as a factor. Over time, repeated exposure creates a constant inflammatory background that keeps joints irritated. Hidden sugars are one of the biggest contributors to this problem. Foods labeled as low-fat, healthy, or natural often contain added sugars to improve taste. Salad dressings, sauces, flavored yogurts, protein bars, and even bread can contain surprising amounts of sugar. Because these foods don't taste sweet in the traditional sense, people consume them frequently, unknowingly increasing their inflammatory load. Sugar also affects energy levels and mood, which indirectly influence arthritis pain. Blood sugar spikes are often followed by crashes, leading to fatigue and irritability. When the body is tired, muscles provide less support to joints, increasing strain and discomfort. Fatigue also makes it harder to stay active, which can worsen stiffness and reduce joint mobility over time. Another overlooked factor is sugar's interaction with stress hormones. High sugar intake can increase cortisol levels, especially when consumed regularly. Elevated cortisol contributes to chronic inflammation and disrupts sleep, both of which are closely linked to arthritis severity. Poor sleep reduces the body's ability to repair tissues and regulate immune responses, making joints more sensitive and reactive. Sugar doesn't just affect physical processes. It also shapes habits and cravings. It activates reward pathways in the brain, encouraging repeated consumption. This creates a cycle where sugar temporarily boosts mood, followed by inflammation and pain, which then increases cravings for comfort foods. Breaking this cycle can feel challenging, but awareness is the first step toward change. Reducing sugar doesn't mean eliminating all sweetness from life. The body responds very differently to natural sugars found in whole fruits, which come packaged with fiber, antioxidants, and anti-inflammatory compounds. These nutrients slow sugar absorption and actively help reduce inflammation rather than promote it. This contrast highlights that the problem is not sweetness itself, but concentrated and added sugars that overwhelm the body's regulatory systems. As sugar intake decreases, many people begin to notice subtle but meaningful changes. Morning stiffness may lessen, swelling may reduce, and joints may feel more responsive. These improvements often happen gradually, reinforcing the idea that inflammation responds to consistency rather than quick fixes. The body starts receiving clearer signals that it no longer needs to stay in a heightened inflammatory state. Understanding sugar's role in arthritis pain shifts the conversation away from blame and toward biology. The pain is not imagined, exaggerated, or inevitable. It is often the result of repeated biochemical reactions that can be influenced over time. When sugar is reduced, the inflammatory burden lightens, giving joints a better chance to move, support weight, and function with less resistance and discomfort. Hidden sugars are one of the most underestimated contributors to arthritis pain because they rarely show up in ways people expect. When someone thinks about sugar, they imagine desserts, candy, or soda. But the reality is that sugar has been quietly added to thousands of packaged foods that don't taste sweet at all. This creates a situation where people believe they are eating responsibly while their joints continue to suffer without an obvious explanation. Food manufacturers add sugar for many reasons beyond sweetness. Sugar improves texture, extends shelf life, enhances flavor, and even balances salt and acidity. Because of this, it appears in foods like bread, salad dressings, pasta sauces, soups, flavored yogurts, cereals, protein bars, and so-called healthy snacks. These foods are often eaten daily, sometimes multiple times a day, creating a steady stream of sugar entering the body without people ever realizing how much they're consuming. For someone with arthritis, this constant intake matters more than occasional indulgence. The body doesn't differentiate between sugar from a dessert and sugar hidden in a savory product. Once it enters the bloodstream, it triggers the same inflammatory responses. Over time, this repeated exposure keeps inflammation levels elevated, making joints more sensitive, more reactive, and slower to recover after everyday movement. One of the most frustrating aspects of hidden sugar is that it undermines people's efforts to eat better. Someone may cut out obvious sweets, stop drinking soda, and still see no improvement in joint pain. This often leads to discouragement and the belief that diet doesn't make a difference. In reality, sugar may still be present in large amounts, quietly sustaining inflammation behind the scenes. Labels can be misleading, especially when sugar appears under different names. Ingredients like high-fructose corn syrup, cane juice, maltodextrin, dextrose, fructose, sucrose, rice syrup, and evaporated cane sugar all contribute to the same inflammatory process. Many people don't recognize these as sugars, which allows intake to remain high even when they think they are being cautious. Low-fat and fat-free products are especially problematic. When fat is removed, flavor is often replaced with sugar. Yogurts, milk alternatives, sauces, and snack foods marketed as light or diet-friendly may contain more sugar than their full-fat counterparts. For arthritis sufferers, this trade-off can be costly, as sugar increases inflammation far more than natural fats like those found in whole foods. Hidden sugar also affects appetite regulation. Foods high in added sugars tend to be low in fiber and protein, which means they digest quickly and leave people feeling hungry again soon after eating. This leads to frequent snacking and overeating, further increasing sugar intake. Constant digestion keeps insulin levels elevated, reinforcing inflammatory pathways that affect joint tissue. Another layer of the problem is how hidden sugar interacts with inflammation already present in the body. Arthritis joints are already in a vulnerable state, and when sugar-driven inflammation is added, the threshold for pain becomes much lower. Movements that once felt manageable may suddenly feel uncomfortable, and flare-ups may occur more frequently without any clear cause. Hidden sugars also interfere with nutrient absorption. When the diet is dominated by processed foods containing added sugars, the body may not receive enough vitamins and minerals needed for joint health, such as magnesium, zinc, and vitamin D. This creates a double burden where inflammation increases while the body lacks the tools it needs to repair and protect joint tissues. For many people, the effects of hidden sugar are subtle but cumulative. There may not be an immediate spike in pain after one meal, but over weeks and months, stiffness becomes more persistent, swelling lingers longer, and recovery after activity slows down. Because these changes happen gradually, they're often attributed to aging or disease progression rather than diet. The emotional side of hidden sugar is also significant. People often feel confused or frustrated when they're doing what they believe is right yet continue to feel unwell. This frustration can lead to resignation, where individuals stop trying to make changes altogether. Understanding that hidden sugars exist can restore a sense of clarity and control, turning confusion into informed decision-making. Becoming aware of hidden sugar doesn't require perfection or extreme restriction. It starts with curiosity and paying closer attention to ingredient lists. As people begin choosing foods with fewer additives and more whole ingredients, sugar intake naturally decreases. Many are surprised to find that their taste buds adjust, and foods they once enjoyed start to taste overly sweet. As hidden sugar intake drops, the body often responds with reduced inflammation. Joints may feel less swollen, morning stiffness may ease, and energy levels may improve. These changes reinforce the connection between food choices and physical sensations, helping people trust their body's feedback rather than dismiss it. Understanding hidden sugars shifts the focus from blame to awareness. Arthritis pain isn't always about doing something wrong, but about being exposed to things we were never taught to look for. Once those hidden contributors are brought into the light, food becomes less of a mystery and more of a tool for supporting joint health, comfort, and daily movement without constant irritation or surprise flare-ups driven by ingredients hiding in plain sight. Refined carbohydrates play a powerful and often overlooked role in arthritis pain because of how quickly they turn into sugar once they enter the body. Foods like white bread, white rice, pasta, pastries, crackers, and many packaged snacks may not taste sweet, but biologically they behave very much like sugar. As soon as they are digested, they cause rapid spikes in blood glucose, which immediately activates inflammatory responses that can aggravate sensitive joints. When refined carbohydrates are consumed, they are stripped of their natural fiber and nutrients during processing. Fiber normally slows digestion and helps regulate blood sugar, but without it, these foods break down extremely fast. The body is forced to release large amounts of insulin to manage the sudden glucose surge. Repeated insulin spikes are strongly associated with chronic inflammation, which is one of the main drivers of arthritis pain and stiffness. This inflammatory response doesn't stay confined to the bloodstream. The chemicals released during blood sugar spikes circulate throughout the body and often settle in joints that are already vulnerable. Cartilage, joint linings, and surrounding tissues become irritated, making movement feel more uncomfortable. This is why people with arthritis often notice increased stiffness or aching after meals heavy in refined carbohydrates, even if those meals seem harmless. Another major issue with refined carbs is how frequently they appear in the modern diet. They are often consumed at every meal, from toast or cereal at breakfast to sandwiches at lunch and pasta or rice at dinner. Snacks in between are often crackers, chips, or baked goods made from refined flour. This constant intake means the body rarely gets a break from elevated blood sugar and insulin levels, keeping inflammation switched on throughout the day. Refined carbohydrates also contribute to weight gain, which adds mechanical stress to joints. Excess body weight places additional pressure on weight-bearing joints like the knees, hips, and spine. For someone with arthritis, this extra load can intensify pain and accelerate joint wear. The combination of increased inflammation and added mechanical stress creates a cycle that makes symptoms progressively worse. These foods also affect energy levels in a way that indirectly impacts joint health. Blood sugar spikes are usually followed by crashes, leading to fatigue and sluggishness. When energy is low, muscles become less effective at supporting joints, increasing strain during movement. Fatigue also reduces motivation to stay active, and reduced movement can lead to stiffness and decreased joint flexibility over time. Refined carbohydrates can also interfere with gut health, which plays a key role in regulating inflammation. Diets high in refined grains tend to feed harmful gut bacteria, while starving beneficial ones. This imbalance can weaken the gut lining, allowing inflammatory substances to leak into the bloodstream. Once circulating, these substances can worsen joint inflammation and trigger flare-ups without any obvious physical cause. Another problem is how refined carbohydrates affect appetite regulation. These foods digest quickly and provide little satiety, leading people to eat more than they need. Frequent eating keeps insulin levels elevated and prevents the body from entering a state of metabolic balance. For arthritis sufferers, this constant metabolic stress contributes to ongoing inflammation that keeps joints sensitive and reactive. Many people turn to refined carbohydrates for comfort, convenience, or affordability. These foods are easy to prepare, widely available, and culturally normalized. Because they are so familiar, their impact on joint pain is rarely questioned. Over time, stiffness and discomfort are blamed on aging or disease progression, rather than the cumulative effect of daily food choices. The contrast between refined carbohydrates and whole carbohydrates is significant. Whole grains, legumes, vegetables, and intact starches digest more slowly and provide fiber, vitamins, and minerals that support metabolic health. They help stabilize blood sugar rather than spike it, allowing inflammatory responses to remain under control. When people replace refined carbs with whole food alternatives, many notice steadier energy levels and improved joint comfort. It's also important to recognize that refined carbohydrates often come packaged with other inflammatory ingredients, such as added sugars, unhealthy oils, and preservatives. This combination amplifies their negative effect on joints. The body is not just processing refined starch, but a cocktail of compounds that strain the immune and digestive systems simultaneously. The effects of refined carbohydrates on arthritis are rarely immediate, which makes the connection easy to miss. A single meal may not cause noticeable pain, but repeated exposure over weeks and months builds an inflammatory environment that gradually worsens symptoms. Morning stiffness becomes more pronounced, swelling lingers longer, and joints feel less resilient after normal activity. Reducing refined carbohydrates does not require eliminating carbohydrates entirely. The goal is not restriction, but quality. When the body receives carbohydrates in their natural fiber-rich form, it responds very differently. Inflammation decreases, insulin levels stabilize, and joints are less likely to flare in response to everyday movement. As refined carbohydrates are reduced, many people experience subtle but meaningful changes. Joints may feel less stiff upon waking, movement may become smoother, and flare-ups may occur less often. These changes reinforce the idea that arthritis pain is not only about joint damage, but about the internal environment created by daily habits. Understanding the role of refined carbohydrates empowers people to make informed choices rather than feeling controlled by their diagnosis. Food becomes a tool for influencing inflammation instead of an enemy to fear. When refined carbs no longer dominate the diet, the body gains a better chance to regulate inflammation naturally, allowing joints to move with greater ease and less irritation as the inflammatory load gradually decreases. Fried foods have a powerful and often underestimated effect on arthritis because of what happens to food when it's exposed to extremely high heat and unhealthy oils. While fried meals may feel satisfying in the moment, they create compounds that place significant stress on the body, especially on joints that are already inflamed or sensitive. For someone living with arthritis, these foods can quietly accelerate pain, stiffness, and long-term joint damage without making the connection immediately obvious. When foods are fried, especially through deep frying, they produce substances known as advanced glycation end products. These compounds form when fats and proteins are exposed to high temperatures, and once they enter the body, they trigger strong inflammatory responses. Advanced glycation end products increase oxidative stress and directly damage tissues, including cartilage and joint linings. This damage makes joints less flexible and more prone to pain during everyday movement. Fried foods are also typically cooked in oils that are unstable at high temperatures. Oils like vegetable oil, corn oil, soybean oil, and sunflower oil break down during frying and form inflammatory byproducts. These compounds disrupt the balance of fats in the body and push it toward a pro-inflammatory state. For arthritis sufferers, this shift can worsen swelling and make joints feel hotter, stiffer, and more tender. Another issue with fried foods is how they affect the immune system. Arthritis, particularly inflammatory forms, involves immune activity that mistakenly targets joint tissues. Fried foods stimulate immune cells in a way that increases the release of inflammatory chemicals. These chemicals don't just affect one joint, they circulate throughout the body, increasing the likelihood of widespread pain and flare-ups. Fried foods also contribute to oxidative stress, which damages cells over time. Oxidative stress occurs when there are too many free radicals and not enough antioxidants to neutralize them. Joint tissues are particularly vulnerable to this kind of damage because cartilage has limited ability to repair itself. When oxidative stress increases, cartilage breaks down faster, reducing the cushioning between bones and increasing pain with movement. Weight gain is another important factor linked to fried foods. These foods are calorie-dense and easy to overeat, leading to gradual weight gain over time. Extra body weight increases pressure on weight-bearing joints such as the knees, hips, and lower back. For someone with arthritis, even a small increase in weight can significantly worsen pain and reduce mobility, compounding the inflammatory effects of fried foods themselves. Fried foods also interfere with blood sugar regulation. Many fried items are made from refined carbohydrates like potatoes, flour, or breading. When combined with unhealthy fats, they cause sharp spikes in blood sugar, followed by crashes. These fluctuations trigger inflammation and fatigue, which can worsen joint pain and reduce muscle support around the joints. The digestive system also struggles with fried foods. They take longer to digest and can irritate the gut lining. Poor digestion and gut irritation are closely linked to increased inflammation throughout the body. When the gut barrier is compromised, Inflammatory substances can enter the bloodstream more easily and aggravate joints, increasing pain and stiffness without a clear external cause. Another reason fried foods are problematic is their frequency in modern diets. Fast food, takeout meals, and packaged fried snacks are widely available and heavily marketed. Because they are convenient and familiar, people may consume them several times a week or even daily. This repeated exposure keeps inflammation elevated, preventing the body from fully recovering between meals. Fried foods also displace healthier options. When meals are built around fried items, there is often less room for vegetables, healthy fats, and nutrient-dense foods that support joint health. This creates a nutritional imbalance where the body receives more inflammatory compounds and fewer protective nutrients like antioxidants, omega-3 fatty acids, and minerals essential for joint repair. The impact of fried foods on arthritis is rarely immediate, which makes the connection easy to miss. Someone might enjoy fried food and feel fine that day, only to notice increased stiffness or swelling the next morning. Because the response is delayed, fried foods are rarely identified as the trigger. Over time, however, these delayed reactions accumulate and contribute to a steady decline in joint comfort and function. Many people associate fried foods with enjoyment and comfort, which can make reducing them emotionally challenging. Food memories, social gatherings, and habits all play a role. This emotional attachment can mask the physical consequences, making it harder to recognize how much these foods are contributing to pain. Replacing fried foods with alternatives can dramatically change how joints feel over time. Cooking methods like baking, roasting, grilling, or air frying allow foods to retain flavor and texture without producing the same inflammatory compounds. Using stable fats like olive oil helps reduce oxidative stress and supports the body's natural anti-inflammatory processes. As fried foods are reduced, many people notice gradual improvements. Joints may feel less swollen, movement may become easier, and flare-ups may become less frequent. These changes reinforce the idea that joint pain is not only about structural damage, but about daily exposure to inflammatory triggers. Understanding the impact of fried foods reframes arthritis management from restriction to protection. It's not about avoiding pleasure, but about choosing foods that support movement, comfort, and long-term joint health. When fried foods are no longer a regular part of the diet, the body experiences less inflammatory stress, allowing joints to function with greater ease and resilience as the internal environment becomes calmer and more supportive of healing rather than constant irritation. Processed meats have a surprisingly strong connection to arthritis pain, even though they're often seen as quick, convenient sources of protein. Foods like bacon, sausages, hot dogs, deli meats, salami, and packaged meat snacks may seem harmless, but the way they are preserved and processed creates a perfect environment for inflammation to thrive inside the body. For joints that are already sensitive or damaged, this inflammatory burden can significantly worsen pain, stiffness, and swelling over time. One of the biggest issues with processed meats is the presence of preservatives such as nitrates and nitrites. These chemicals are added to extend shelf life, enhance color, and improve flavor, but once inside the body, they can form compounds that promote inflammation. These compounds increase oxidative stress and trigger immune responses that directly affect joint tissues. For someone with arthritis, this can mean joints that feel more tender, swollen, and slow to recover after movement. Processed meats are also high in saturated fats, which are known to stimulate inflammatory pathways. Excess saturated fat activates immune cells that release inflammatory chemicals into the bloodstream. These chemicals don't stay confined to one area. They circulate and often settle in joints where inflammation is already present. This can intensify existing arthritis symptoms and make flare-ups more frequent and more severe. Another problem is that processed meats often contain advanced glycation end products, which form during high-temperature cooking and curing processes. These compounds damage collagen and cartilage, reducing joint flexibility and resilience. Collagen is essential for maintaining the structure and cushioning of joints, and when it becomes stiff or damaged, movement becomes more painful and less fluid. Salt content is another overlooked factor. Processed meats are typically very high in sodium, which can contribute to water retention and increase swelling in joint tissues. For people with arthritis, Excess swelling can limit range of motion and increase pressure inside the joint, making pain more noticeable during everyday activities like walking, gripping objects, or standing up from a chair. Processed meats also negatively affect gut health, which plays a central role in regulating inflammation. These foods can disrupt the balance of gut bacteria, favoring strains that promote inflammation while reducing beneficial bacteria that help keep the immune system in check. An imbalanced gut increases intestinal permeability, allowing inflammatory compounds to leak into the bloodstream and aggravate joints from the inside out. Another issue is how frequently processed meats are consumed. Many people include them daily at breakfast, lunch, or as snacks because they're fast, affordable, and widely available. This repeated exposure means the body is constantly processing inflammatory substances, leaving little opportunity for inflammation to fully settle. Over time, this creates a chronic inflammatory state that keeps arthritis symptoms active even when no physical strain is involved. Processed meats can also crowd out healthier protein sources. When meals rely heavily on bacon, sausages, or deli meats, there's often less room for foods that actively support joint health, such as fish, legumes, nuts, or lean unprocessed meats. This nutritional imbalance means the body receives fewer anti-inflammatory nutrients while being overloaded with inflammatory triggers. There's also a metabolic impact to consider. Diets high in processed meats are often associated with insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction, both of which are linked to chronic inflammation. When metabolic health declines, the body becomes less efficient at regulating immune responses, making joints more reactive and sensitive to stress. Many people don't associate processed meats with arthritis pain because the effects are rarely immediate. Someone may eat a sandwich with deli meat or a breakfast with bacon and feel fine at the moment. The increase in inflammation often shows up hours or even days later as stiffness, aching, or swelling. This delay makes it easy to miss the connection and continue the habit without realizing its impact. Cultural and emotional factors also play a role. Processed meats are often tied to comfort foods, traditions, and social settings. Letting go of these foods can feel like giving something up emotionally, not just nutritionally. This attachment can make it harder to recognize how much these foods are contributing to physical discomfort. Over time, the cumulative effect of processed meats becomes more apparent. Joints may feel consistently sore, flare-ups may last longer, and recovery after physical activity may slow down. These changes are often blamed on disease progression rather than diet, even though food choices are playing a significant role behind the scenes. When processed meats are reduced or removed, many people notice gradual improvements. Swelling may decrease, joints may feel less tender, and movement may become easier. These changes don't usually happen overnight, but they build steadily as the body experiences less inflammatory stress and gains more opportunity to repair and regulate itself. Replacing processed meats with whole, unprocessed protein sources can make a meaningful difference. Foods like fish, beans, lentils, eggs, and fresh poultry provide protein without the inflammatory additives. Fatty fish in particular offer omega-3 fatty acids, which actively reduce joint inflammation and support cartilage health. Understanding the impact of processed meats helps shift arthritis management from feeling reactive to feeling intentional. Pain becomes a signal rather than a mystery, pointing toward changes that can improve comfort and mobility. When these foods are no longer a regular part of the diet, the body often responds with calmer immune activity, reduced swelling, and joints that feel more supported and less constantly under attack from internal inflammatory triggers that were once mistaken for unavoidable symptoms of arthritis. Omega-3-rich fish play a powerful role in reducing joint tenderness because they directly influence the inflammatory processes that drive arthritis pain at its core. Unlike many foods that simply avoid making inflammation worse, omega-3 fatty acids actively help calm it down. This distinction is important because arthritis is not just about avoiding harm, but about giving the body the tools it needs to restore balance and reduce the immune overreaction that targets joint tissues. Omega-3 fatty acids, especially EPA and DHA found in fatty fish, work by altering the production of inflammatory chemicals in the body. When inflammation is high, the body produces compounds that increase pain sensitivity, swelling, and stiffness in the joints. Omega-3s help shift this process by reducing the production of these compounds while encouraging the creation of anti-inflammatory molecules instead. This shift doesn't numb pain artificially, it changes the internal environment that causes the pain in the first place. One of the reasons omega-3s are so effective for arthritis is their ability to integrate into cell membranes. Once incorporated, they influence how immune cells behave. Immune cells become less aggressive and less likely to release inflammatory signals that damage cartilage and joint linings. Over time, this leads to joints that feel less tender to touch and less reactive during movement. Joint tenderness is often one of the earliest and most frustrating symptoms of arthritis. Even light pressure or normal activity can feel uncomfortable when inflammation is high. Omega-3 fatty acids help reduce this sensitivity by lowering inflammation at the tissue level. As inflammation decreases, nerve endings around the joints become less irritated, making everyday movements feel more comfortable and controlled. Another important benefit of omega-3-rich fish is their role in protecting cartilage. Cartilage has very limited ability to repair itself, and chronic inflammation accelerates its breakdown. Omega-3s help slow this process by reducing the inflammatory enzymes that degrade cartilage over time. By protecting what cartilage remains, omega-3s help preserve joint cushioning and reduce the friction that contributes to pain. Omega-3s also support better circulation, which is important for joint health. Improved blood flow helps deliver oxygen and nutrients to joint tissues while removing inflammatory waste products more efficiently. This improved circulation can contribute to reduced stiffness and quicker recovery after physical activity, especially for people who experience lingering soreness after movement. Another reason omega-3-rich fish are so beneficial is their effect on morning stiffness. Many people with arthritis notice that stiffness is worst after periods of rest, particularly in the morning. This stiffness is largely driven by inflammation that accumulates overnight. Regular intake of omega-3s has been shown to reduce the duration and severity of morning stiffness, allowing joints to loosen up more quickly and comfortably. Omega-3s also influence the balance of fats in the body. Modern diets tend to be very high in omega-6 fatty acids, which promote inflammation when consumed in excess. Omega-3s help counterbalance this effect, restoring a healthier ratio that favors inflammation control rather than escalation. This balance is crucial for long-term joint comfort and resilience. Fatty fish also provide high-quality protein, which supports muscle strength around the joints. Strong muscles help stabilize joints and reduce mechanical stress during movement. When joints are better supported, they experience less strain, which further reduces pain and tenderness. This combination of anti-inflammatory action and structural support makes omega-3-rich fish uniquely effective for arthritis management. Another overlooked benefit is how omega-3s affect mood and pain perception. Chronic pain often alters how the brain processes discomfort, making pain feel more intense. Omega-3 fatty acids support brain health and may help regulate neurotransmitters involved in pain signaling. This can lead to a more balanced pain response and improved overall well-being. Consistency is key when it comes to omega-3 intake. These fatty acids work gradually as they become incorporated into tissues and cell membranes. While some people may notice improvements within weeks, the most significant benefits often appear with regular, long-term consumption. This gradual improvement reflects true changes in inflammation rather than temporary symptom suppression. People who replace inflammatory protein sources with omega-3-rich fish often notice additional benefits beyond joint tenderness. Reduced swelling, improved grip strength, and greater ease of movement are commonly reported. These changes reinforce the idea that food can be a powerful ally in managing arthritis rather than just a neutral factor. Omega-3-rich fish also support heart health, which is especially important for people with arthritis, as chronic inflammation increases cardiovascular risk. By reducing systemic inflammation, omega-3s provide benefits that extend beyond the joints, supporting overall health and longevity. Understanding the role of omega-3-rich fish reframes arthritis care from avoidance to nourishment. Instead of focusing only on what to eliminate, attention shifts toward what to include to actively support healing. These fats send a clear signal to the immune system that it can calm down, repair, and protect rather than attack. When omega-3 rich fish become a regular part of the diet, joints often feel less tender, less swollen, and more responsive to movement. This improvement builds gradually, reinforcing the connection between nourishment and comfort. Over time, the body begins to operate in a less inflammatory state, allowing joints to move with greater ease and resilience as the internal environment becomes more supportive of balance and repair rather than constant irritation and sensitivity. Dairy is one of those foods that affects people in very different ways, and for many with arthritis, it can quietly exacerbate symptoms without being immediately obvious. While dairy products like milk, cheese, and yogurt are often promoted for their calcium and protein content, certain compounds in these foods can trigger immune responses that increase joint inflammation. This is particularly true for people with inflammatory forms of arthritis, where the immune system mistakenly attacks the body's own tissues, and dairy proteins can amplify that reaction. One of the main culprits in dairy is a group of proteins called casein and whey. These proteins can sometimes act as inflammatory triggers for sensitive individuals, leading to increased pain and stiffness in joints. When the immune system identifies these proteins as potentially harmful, it responds by releasing inflammatory chemicals that travel throughout the body, often settling in joints that are already vulnerable due to arthritis. This can result in flare-ups that feel sudden or unpredictable, even when no other lifestyle factors have changed. Another issue is lactose, the natural sugar found in milk and many dairy products. While lactose intolerance primarily affects digestion, it can also contribute indirectly to inflammation. When lactose is poorly digested, it ferments in the gut, leading to gas, bloating, and irritation of the intestinal lining. A compromised gut lining allows inflammatory compounds to enter the bloodstream more easily, which can worsen arthritis symptoms. This connection between gut health and joint pain highlights why dairy may affect some people more than others. Processed dairy products often contain additives, stabilizers, and sweeteners that can further exacerbate inflammation. Flavored yogurts, cheese spreads, and packaged milk drinks may contain added sugars or preservatives that trigger inflammatory responses. For someone with arthritis, even small amounts of these additives can contribute to swelling, tenderness, and joint stiffness over time, making it difficult to isolate the source of discomfort. Dairy also influences the balance of fats in the body. Full-fat dairy contains saturated fats, which have been linked to increased inflammatory activity when consumed in excess. While some fats are essential for health, an imbalance that favors saturated fats over anti-inflammatory fats can create a systemic environment where joints remain sensitive and more prone to pain. This is particularly important for people who consume multiple servings of dairy each day, as the cumulative effect can be significant. The effect of dairy on arthritis can vary greatly from person to person. Some people tolerate dairy perfectly well, while others notice an increase in stiffness, swelling, or pain after consuming even moderate amounts. This variability is one reason why dairy is such a controversial topic in arthritis management, and why paying attention to individual responses is crucial. Keeping a food journal and monitoring symptoms can help identify whether dairy is a contributing factor. Dairy consumption can also indirectly affect inflammation through its impact on overall diet quality. Many diets that include high amounts of cheese, milk, or ice cream may displace nutrient-rich anti-inflammatory foods such as leafy greens, fatty fish, nuts, and seeds. When anti-inflammatory nutrients are lacking, the body becomes more susceptible to flare-ups, and joints may remain tender and swollen longer than they would in a more balanced diet. Another factor to consider is that dairy can sometimes trigger low-grade immune reactions that are subtle but persistent. Unlike a classic allergic reaction, these responses may not cause immediate digestive distress or hives, but they still stimulate the immune system to produce inflammatory chemicals. Over time, this chronic low-grade inflammation can contribute to a baseline level of joint discomfort, making everyday activities more challenging and flare-ups more frequent. Dairy can also interact with other inflammatory foods in ways that amplify symptoms. For example, a meal that combines cheese with refined carbohydrates or fried foods can create a cumulative inflammatory effect that is greater than the sum of its parts. In such cases, even moderate portions of dairy can exacerbate joint pain when combined with other pro-inflammatory dietary factors. For people who notice a connection between dairy and arthritis symptoms, alternatives can provide similar nutritional benefits without the inflammatory response. Plant-based milks such as almond, oat, or coconut milk offer calcium and protein options without casein or whey. Non-dairy yogurts made from these bases often include added probiotics, which can support gut health and further reduce systemic inflammation. Switching to these alternatives can help reduce joint swelling and tenderness over time while maintaining a balanced diet. It's also important to recognize that reducing or eliminating dairy doesn't mean compromising on taste or nutrition. Many people report that after a period of adjustment, they feel lighter, experience less stiffness, and have more flexibility in their joints. These improvements highlight how influential dietary choices can be for managing inflammation and arthritis symptoms. Understanding dairy's potential impact reframes arthritis management from a one-size-fits-all approach to a more personalized strategy. Instead of automatically assuming dairy is either good or bad, paying attention to how the body responds allows for more informed decisions. By observing patterns of pain, stiffness, and swelling, individuals can identify whether dairy contributes to their symptoms and adjust accordingly. When dairy is reduced or replaced with anti-inflammatory alternatives, the effects on joint comfort can be significant. Swelling may decrease, tenderness may lessen, and movement may become easier, even during periods of increased activity. Over time, this creates a more supportive internal environment where joints are less reactive, flare-ups occur less frequently, and the body is better able to maintain mobility and function without constant inflammation driving discomfort. Highly processed vegetable oils are one of the most overlooked contributors to arthritis and chronic inflammation, even though they are present in countless packaged and prepared foods. Oils such as corn oil, soybean oil, sunflower oil, and cottonseed oil are widely used because they are inexpensive, have a long shelf life, and are convenient for frying and baking. While they may seem harmless, these oils are extremely high in omega-6 fatty acids, which, when consumed in excess, can actively promote inflammation in the body. For people with arthritis, this type of chronic inflammation directly affects the joints, contributing to swelling, tenderness, and stiffness that interfere with daily movement. The problem with processed vegetable oils begins with their fatty acid composition. Omega-6 fatty acids are essential in small amounts, but the modern diet often contains far more omega-6 than omega-3 fatty acids. This imbalance triggers the production of pro-inflammatory compounds that circulate throughout the body. For someone with arthritis, this means the joints are continuously exposed to signals that increase immune activity and inflammation, creating an internal environment where pain and stiffness are more likely to occur. The process used to extract and refine these oils makes the problem worse. Highly processed vegetable oils undergo chemical extraction, bleaching, and deodorization, which alters their natural structure. This process produces trans fats and other unstable compounds that further increase oxidative stress in the body. Oxidative stress damages joint tissues, including cartilage and the synovial lining, which reduces flexibility and increases susceptibility to pain and injury. Over time, the combination of chronic inflammation and oxidative stress can accelerate joint degeneration, making arthritis symptoms more persistent and severe. Processed vegetable oils also interact with other aspects of diet and lifestyle to exacerbate arthritis. They are often found in packaged snacks, baked goods, fast foods, and restaurant meals, meaning they are consumed repeatedly and in significant quantities. Unlike whole foods that naturally contain antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds, these oils provide a concentrated source of pro-inflammatory fats without the nutrients needed to counteract their effects. This creates a situation where inflammation remains high, even if the rest of the diet includes some healthy foods. One of the more subtle effects of these oils is their impact on cell membranes. Fats consumed in the diet are incorporated into the membranes of cells throughout the body, including immune cells. When omega-6 fats dominate the cell membrane, immune cells are more likely to release inflammatory signals. In joints, this increased inflammatory signaling can heighten pain sensitivity, cause swelling, and make movements like bending, walking, or gripping objects feel more difficult and uncomfortable. Processed vegetable oils also affect the body's ability to balance other important fats. Omega-3 fatty acids, which are anti-inflammatory, compete with omega-6 fatty acids for incorporation into cell membranes and the production of regulatory molecules. When omega-6 intake is excessively high, it effectively crowds out the beneficial omega-3s, reducing the body's natural ability to control inflammation. For arthritis sufferers, this imbalance makes it harder to calm flare-ups and slows recovery after physical activity or joint stress. These oils can also negatively impact gut health. Diets high in processed fats are associated with changes in gut bacteria, favoring pro-inflammatory strains over beneficial ones. A compromised gut microbiome can weaken the intestinal barrier, allowing inflammatory substances to enter the bloodstream more easily and reach the joints. This gut-joint connection helps explain why people with arthritis often feel joint pain after consuming processed oils, even if the meal seems harmless at first glance. Another concern is how these oils interact with other dietary components. Many processed foods that contain vegetable oils also include refined carbohydrates, sugars, and additives, which further amplify inflammation. This combination creates a perfect storm in the body. High omega-6 intake triggers inflammatory signaling, refined carbs spike blood sugar, and oxidative stress damages joint tissues. Together, these effects accelerate arthritis symptoms and make joints more reactive to everyday movements. Processed vegetable oils also influence hormone regulation. Chronic inflammation associated with high omega-6 intake can affect insulin, cortisol, and other hormones that play a role in metabolism and immune function. Hormonal imbalances can exacerbate arthritis by increasing systemic inflammation, reducing the body's ability to repair tissues, and heightening sensitivity to pain. For people already experiencing joint discomfort, this can create a cycle where inflammation feeds itself and symptoms continue to escalate. Reducing or replacing processed vegetable oils can have a significant impact on joint health over time. Oils such as olive oil, avocado oil, and coconut oil are more stable, contain anti-inflammatory compounds, and support a healthier balance of fatty acids in the body. Using these oils instead of processed vegetable oils can lower inflammation, reduce oxidative stress, and support overall cellular health. For arthritis sufferers, this translates to decreased joint swelling, less tenderness, and improved mobility. Switching away from processed vegetable oils doesn't just affect meals that are cooked at home. It also encourages more mindful choices when eating out or purchasing packaged foods. Foods that rely heavily on cheap oils often contain additional hidden inflammatory ingredients, so reducing these oils indirectly reduces exposure to other inflammatory compounds as well. Over time, this contributes to a lower baseline level of inflammation in the body and more consistent joint comfort. The benefits of replacing processed vegetable oils are often gradual but noticeable. Many people report less stiffness in the morning, improved ease of movement throughout the day, and a decrease in flare-ups that used to seem unpredictable. Joints feel less reactive and more resilient, allowing for more comfortable participation in daily activities. These changes reinforce the idea that inflammation is modifiable and that diet plays a central role in arthritis management. Understanding the impact of processed vegetable oils reframes arthritis management from a reactive approach to a proactive one. It emphasizes the importance of what is included in the diet as much as what is excluded. By choosing stable, anti-inflammatory fats and reducing exposure to pro-inflammatory oils, people with arthritis gain a powerful tool to influence the internal environment of their joints, support tissue repair, and improve overall comfort and mobility over time. The shift away from these oils allows the body to function with less inflammatory stress, giving joints a better chance to move freely and feel less irritated even during periods of increased activity. Alcohol is one of those substances that many people associate with relaxation and social enjoyment, but for individuals with arthritis, it can quietly exacerbate pain, swelling, and joint stiffness in ways that are not always obvious. While occasional moderate consumption may seem harmless, regular or excessive drinking significantly impacts inflammation, immune function, and tissue repair, all of which are critical for maintaining joint health. Understanding how alcohol interacts with the body and joints is key to recognizing its role in arthritis symptoms and why reducing intake can lead to noticeable improvements in comfort and mobility. One of the primary ways alcohol affects arthritis is through its impact on inflammation. Alcohol is metabolized in the liver, producing byproducts that can trigger inflammatory pathways. Even moderate alcohol consumption stimulates the production of cytokines, which are inflammatory chemicals that circulate throughout the body and often settle in joints that are already vulnerable. For someone with arthritis, this means that joints are exposed to additional inflammatory stress, increasing swelling, tenderness, and sensitivity to movement. Alcohol also affects the body's ability to repair itself. Joint tissues rely on a steady supply of nutrients and proper cellular function to maintain structure and integrity. Regular alcohol intake disrupts this balance by impairing protein synthesis, depleting essential vitamins and minerals, and increasing oxidative stress. Over time, these effects reduce the body's capacity to repair cartilage and maintain healthy joint linings, making movement more painful and increasing susceptibility to flare-ups. Another major factor is how alcohol interacts with the immune system. Arthritis, particularly inflammatory types, involves overactive immune responses that mistakenly target joint tissues. Alcohol can both suppress and dysregulate immune function, creating a paradox where the body is less able to fight infections but more prone to inflammation in areas like the joints. This imbalance often manifests as increased tenderness, swelling, or stiffness after drinking, even when no other lifestyle factors have changed. Alcohol also affects sleep quality, which is closely linked to arthritis symptoms. Poor or disrupted sleep impairs the body's ability to regulate inflammation and repair tissues overnight. Many people with arthritis notice that flare-ups are worse after nights of inadequate sleep, and alcohol contributes to this problem by interfering with REM sleep and overall sleep cycles. The result is joints that feel more sensitive and less capable of recovering from daily activity. Another indirect effect of alcohol on arthritis comes from its influence on weight and metabolism. Alcoholic beverages are often calorie-dense and can contribute to weight gain when consumed regularly. Excess weight places mechanical stress on weight-bearing joints such as the knees, hips, and spine, intensifying arthritis pain and stiffness. Additionally, alcohol can alter glucose metabolism and insulin sensitivity, both of which are linked to systemic inflammation and can further exacerbate joint discomfort. Alcohol also affects hydration, which is essential for joint health. Dehydration reduces the fluid levels in the synovial fluid that lubricates joints, making movement less smooth and more uncomfortable. Even mild dehydration can increase the perception of joint stiffness and amplify sensitivity to pain. For someone with arthritis, this means that alcohol can indirectly make joints feel tighter and less resilient, increasing the effort required for everyday movements. Another subtle effect of alcohol is its interaction with medications commonly used for arthritis. Many anti-inflammatory drugs, pain relievers, and other medications are metabolized in the liver, and alcohol can interfere with this process. This can reduce the effectiveness of treatment, increase the risk of side effects, or create additional strain on the liver. For people relying on medication to manage arthritis symptoms, alcohol can undermine these efforts and make flare-ups harder to control. The timing and quantity of alcohol consumption also influence its impact. Even occasional drinking can trigger inflammatory responses in susceptible individuals, especially if consumed in large amounts or alongside other pro-inflammatory foods. Mixed drinks with added sugars, fried foods, or processed snacks can amplify the inflammatory response, creating a cumulative effect that worsens joint pain, stiffness, and swelling. Alcohol can also affect the perception of pain. Chronic alcohol consumption alters neurotransmitter activity in the brain, which can heighten pain sensitivity over time. While alcohol may temporarily numb discomfort or provide a sense of relaxation, it does not address the underlying inflammation and can actually make joints more reactive in the long term. This creates a cycle where temporary relief is followed by increased tenderness and flare-ups. Reducing alcohol intake often leads to noticeable improvements in arthritis symptoms over time. Swelling may decrease, tenderness may lessen, and joints often feel more flexible and responsive. Many people also notice better sleep, improved energy levels, and enhanced recovery after physical activity, all of which contribute to reduced pain and greater mobility. These changes reinforce the idea that alcohol has a direct and measurable impact on joint health, and that moderation or abstinence can be a powerful tool in arthritis management. Understanding alcohol's effects reframes arthritis care from simply managing symptoms to actively reducing triggers. Pain, stiffness, and flare-ups are not just a natural consequence of the disease, but are often influenced by lifestyle factors that can be modified. By recognizing alcohol as a contributor to inflammation and joint discomfort, individuals gain more control over their daily experience of arthritis and can make choices that support long-term joint function and overall well-being. Replacing alcoholic beverages with hydrating, anti-inflammatory alternatives can also support joint health. Options like herbal teas, water infused with lemon, or tart cherry juice provide hydration, antioxidants, and compounds that help reduce inflammation. These alternatives not only reduce the negative impact of alcohol, but actively contribute to a more favorable internal environment for joint repair and comfort. Over time, reducing or eliminating alcohol helps the body maintain a more stable inflammatory balance. Immune function improves, oxidative stress decreases, and the body's natural repair mechanisms work more efficiently. For someone with arthritis, this means fewer flare-ups, reduced tenderness, and joints that feel more resilient and capable of handling everyday movements without persistent discomfort. Recognizing the role of alcohol empowers individuals to take proactive steps, reinforcing the concept that lifestyle choices have a direct and meaningful impact on joint health and overall quality of life. Anti-inflammatory foods have a remarkable ability to reduce pain and improve mobility for people living with arthritis because they actively counteract the biological processes that drive inflammation in the body. Unlike simply avoiding inflammatory foods, incorporating anti-inflammatory choices provides nutrients and compounds that calm the immune system, protect joint tissues, and support overall metabolic health. This approach is powerful because arthritis is not just about structural wear in the joints. It is heavily influenced by chronic inflammation, which can be modified through diet. By consistently including foods with anti-inflammatory properties, the body receives the tools it needs to reduce swelling, tenderness, and stiffness, allowing joints to move more freely and comfortably. One of the key ways anti-inflammatory foods help is by providing antioxidants. Oxidative stress occurs when free radicals overwhelm the body's natural defenses, damaging cells and tissues, including cartilage and synovial membranes. Many anti-inflammatory foods, such as berries, leafy greens, cruciferous vegetables, and colorful fruits, are rich in antioxidants like vitamin C, vitamin E, and polyphenol. These compounds neutralize free radicals, protect joint tissues from further damage, and reduce the signals that trigger inflammatory responses, making movement less painful over time. Omega-3 fatty acids, found in fatty fish like salmon, sardines, and mackerel, as well as in flax seeds and chia seeds, are another crucial component of an anti-inflammatory diet. These fats help regulate immune activity, decreasing the production of inflammatory chemicals called cytokines and promoting the production of compounds that actively reduce inflammation. For joints affected by arthritis, omega-3s can lead to decreased tenderness, less swelling, and improved flexibility, allowing for smoother movement and reduced pain during daily activities. Fiber-rich foods also play an important role in reducing inflammation. Whole grains, legumes, vegetables, and fruits support a healthy gut microbiome, which in turn helps regulate the immune system. A balanced gut microbiome strengthens the intestinal barrier, preventing inflammatory compounds from leaking into the bloodstream and reaching joints. This connection between gut health and joint health highlights why a diet rich in fiber can have systemic anti-inflammatory effects that improve mobility and reduce discomfort in arthritis-affected areas. Spices and herbs such as turmeric, ginger, garlic, and cinnamon contain bioactive compounds that actively reduce inflammation. Curcumin in turmeric, for example, has been studied extensively for its ability to inhibit inflammatory pathways and decrease joint pain. Ginger contains gingerols, which help block enzymes that contribute to inflammation. These spices can be easily incorporated into meals, adding flavor while providing powerful protective effects for joints. Over time, regular consumption can reduce flare-ups and improve overall joint function. Anti-inflammatory foods also provide essential vitamins and minerals that support joint repair and maintenance. Vitamin D, magnesium, calcium, and zinc are all involved in bone and cartilage health, muscle function, and immune regulation. When the diet consistently supplies these nutrients, the body is better equipped to maintain joint integrity and reduce inflammation-driven damage. Foods such as leafy greens, nuts, seeds, fortified plant-based milks, and fatty fish are excellent sources of these nutrients. Another way anti-inflammatory foods help is by reducing systemic inflammatory markers, such as C-reactive protein, CRP, which is often elevated in people with arthritis. Elevated CRP levels correlate with increased pain, swelling, and disease progression. Diets rich in anti-inflammatory compounds have been shown to lower CRP levels, leading to measurable improvements in joint comfort, mobility, and overall physical function. This reduction in systemic inflammation allows joints to feel less tender and more resilient to daily stress. Anti-inflammatory foods can also improve energy levels and overall well-being, which indirectly supports joint health. Chronic inflammation can cause fatigue and reduce the motivation to stay active, which in turn leads to muscle weakness and decreased joint stability. By reducing inflammation through diet, energy levels increase, making it easier to engage in exercise, stretching, and other movements that strengthen muscles and support joint function. This creates a positive cycle where reduced inflammation leads to more activity, which further improves mobility and joint health. The combination of anti-inflammatory foods also helps regulate body weight, which is critical for reducing mechanical stress on joints. Excess weight places additional pressure on knees, hips, and the spine, increasing pain and accelerating cartilage wear. By focusing on nutrient-dense anti-inflammatory foods that are high in fiber, protein, and healthy fats, it becomes easier to maintain a healthy weight, reduce joint strain, and support long-term mobility. In addition to reducing inflammation, anti-inflammatory foods help the body maintain hormonal balance. Chronic inflammation can disrupt insulin, cortisol, and other hormone levels, all of which play a role in immune regulation and joint health. By consistently consuming foods that reduce inflammatory signaling, the body's hormonal environment becomes more stable, further reducing joint sensitivity and enhancing the body's ability to repair tissues. Anti-inflammatory diets are also flexible and can be adapted to individual preferences and tolerances. Whether someone prefers a Mediterranean-style diet with olive oil, fish, nuts, and vegetables, or a plant-based approach rich in legumes, whole grains, and colorful produce, the key principle is the consistent inclusion of foods that provide anti-inflammatory nutrients and minimize pro-inflammatory triggers. This flexibility makes it sustainable over the long term, which is essential for managing chronic conditions like arthritis. Another important aspect is that anti-inflammatory foods can counterbalance the effects of occasional inflammatory meals. While it's ideal to minimize foods that exacerbate inflammation, consuming anti-inflammatory foods regularly helps the body recover more quickly from occasional indulgences. This means that even if flare-ups occur, the severity and duration may be reduced, allowing joints to remain more functional and less painful overall. As people incorporate more anti-inflammatory foods into their diets, the benefits often become noticeable gradually. Morning stiffness may lessen, swelling may decrease, and joints may feel more flexible and easier to move. Over time, regular inclusion of these foods can help reduce the frequency and intensity of arthritis flare-ups, leading to improved overall quality of life and greater independence in daily activities. Understanding the role of anti-inflammatory foods shifts arthritis management from a reactive approach, focused on treating pain after it occurs, to a proactive strategy that addresses underlying inflammation. By choosing foods that actively calm the immune system, protect joint tissues, and support metabolic and gut health, people with arthritis gain a powerful tool to influence their symptoms. This approach empowers individuals to take control of their health, reduce pain, and enhance mobility in a sustainable and natural way. Consistent consumption of anti-inflammatory foods creates an internal environment where joints can function more effectively and comfortably. Inflammation is reduced, cartilage and connective tissues are better supported, and the body becomes more resilient to daily stressors. Over time, this leads to joints that move more freely, flare-ups that are less severe, and an overall improvement in the ability to engage in physical activities without persistent discomfort. By making these foods a central part of the diet, arthritis symptoms can be managed more effectively, allowing for a higher quality of life and greater independence in daily movement.